It's Friday night, guys. You know what that means. It's time for a news round. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here with another episode of News Round. I hope you're all having a good week. Let's dive right into it with the first of 7 news articles that we are going to look at, guys. The first one coming from The Guardian with the headline here: hospital regulators have to shut units due to dilapidation, the NHS England says. Julian Kelly discusses structural unsound hospitals during the evidence to the Commons Public Accounts Committee. This is really damning. We more things having to be taken away from the NHS. But why? Let's read into it, guys. Some hospitals are so dilapidated they regularly have to shut wards and operating theatres to safeguard patient safety, a senior NHS boss has admitted. Julian Kelly, NHS England Deputy Chief Executive, made a statement when giving evidence to the House of Commons Public Account Committee on Thursday. He was being questioned about the progress of the government's pledge to build 40 new hospitals by 2030. Kelly told MPs that some NHS facilities are in such disrepair that the health service had examples all the time where hospitals are having to shut units, discard patients into other spaces where they are losing theatres, which limit our capacity to treat patients. Kelly was referring to the problems caused by hospitals being left structurally unsound, either because they are made of the reinforced autoclad aerial concrete, the RAC, or because their environment has deteriorated over recent years and the NHS capital budget has been squeezed. We have hospital teams which are managing these sorts of issues day in and day out, Kelly said. And we also have examples of managing fire risk, flooding. A lot of this is because we know we've seen a big increase in backlog maintenance, and we know there's a pause in investment in the new hospital infrastructure. The cost of addressing the backlog of maintenance across the NHS estate in England has risen to a record £10.2 billion, of which £1.8 billion is needed for repairs of high-risk problems. For example, the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, King's Lynn, Norfolk, had to mothball 4 of its operation theatres between September 2022 and May this year, allow fail-safe work to take place across its site to stop ceilings and walls from collapsing due to the RAC. It's just, they have to put health and safety above anything else, really. And the walls collapsing and they can't compensate these. It's just so frustrating, guys. It's just incredibly frustrating. Under the hospital's ongoing decade program, with some of its clinical services and wards are being moved into temporary areas while steel supports and inserts to reduce the risk of its roof falling down because of the RAC. Hospital spokesperson says the program is 40% complete, she added. Amanda Pritchard, the NHS England's chief executive, told the MPs that hospital staff find it really quite burdensome to monitor the RAC. Even enhanced monitoring of the concrete does not and can't completely eliminate the risk from RAC, she said. The NHS is implementing a plan to eradicate all RAC from the estate by 2035. Why 2035? Why not sooner? It's not even 10 years away, it's 12 years away. Doncaster Royal Infirmary is at risk of enforced closure because it is experiencing too many problems related to the fact that it is so old, the Health Service Journal reported this week. In May, it was removed without explanation the list of 40 new hospitals that are due to be rebuilt. At the PAC hearing, Kelly and Shona Dunn, the Department of Health and Social Care Second Permanent Secretary, confirmed that the promised 40 new hospitals would not be built by 2030. This is just frustrating, guys. I mean, like, when we've obviously had a lot of talk about obviously the schools and the well-being of children as well as their education being disrupted by RAC, but it's not just here. It's in other places as well, and we're going to be looking at something, I think, another article later on with regards to other places here. But just for the hospitals in general, this is more setbacks for the National Healthcare Service at no fault of their own once again, guys, and it's incredibly frustrating. Which leads us to this next one. This one is also from The Guardian. Working plans to cut funds for care, arts, sports and toilets to plug the 1.2 billion deficit. What on earth is this about? Councils lay out drastic packages of cuts, including to playgrounds and community schemes it measures described as horrendous. This is working council guys going to make significant drastic cuts, and this will not be the last we hear of cuts from certain councils. Working council has laid out drastic package to cut to local services after it in effect declared itself bankrupt this summer, revealing a £1.2 billion deficit racking up from risky investment spree overseen by its former Conservative administration. Plans include scrapping funding for dozens of the town's sport pavilions and toilets, the closure of a swimming pool, cutting resources for parks and the arts, and ending council backing of some community centres, annual concerts, and involvement in youth sporting events. The Trouble Survey local authority also proposed scrapping billions of pounds in support for playgrounds and community care schemes for the young, old and vulnerable residents in an attempt to balance the books. It will also consultation on the proposals next month. In a document setting out a wide range of austerity programmes, it also revealed plans to remove funding for chore and dance classes for residents with Parkinson's disease, as well as grants for community transport for elderly and disabled people, and for a local charity to help domestic abuse survivors. This is only going to affect people's mental health more, guys. It's just, this is so infuriating, depressing. This is all really good stuff. The community work, involvement in sporting events, all this stuff is very, very important, and they're taking that away, and it's so frustrating because they quite simply don't have the money, and because of previous administration they've got this massive deficit and no way of clawing it back. John Barnes, a former independent councillor in the authority, said it's horrendous. I think residents were unaware of quite really how bad it would be. Who would want to come and live and working now? Yeah. It's going to affect everything, with the vulnerable suffering the most. There is so much money owned. It's going to go on and on for 10 or 20 years. The amounts are mind-boggling. The council also said it could not afford to complete a 1,200 home development at the Shearwater Estate, a regeneration scheme that was part way through building, and will seek alternative options to finish the project. Council coordination and support for a summer concert series and annual celebration of Diwali and Chinese New Year, and the town's involvement in the Surrey Youth Games will also cease. All this stuff being taken away because of poor management by Conservative councils. Those gambles have just been so ridiculous. As one of the growing number of English local authorities in financial distress, Working issued a Section 114 notice in June, signalling that it lacked the resources to balance the budgets. Birmingham City Council, the largest local authority in the UK, became the latest to issue such notice this week, blaming a £760 million bill for equal pay claims, problems installing a new IT system, and £1 billion in government cuts over the past decade. Excuse me. Rishi Sunak fought this week to capitalise on the Labour-run authority meltdown, telling the Commons they've bankrupted Birmingham, we can't let them bankrupt Britain. What are you doing? You're bankrupting the Britain, you are. However, councils from across the political divide are increasingly sounding the alarm over mounting financial pressures after years of cuts to central government funding, soaring inflation and rising demands amid the cost of living crisis. Others to issue Section 114 notices in the past couple of years include Conservative-run Northamptonshire and Thurrock, alongside Labour-run Slough and Nottingham. At least 26 English local authorities are thought to be at risk of issuing a Section 114 notice within the next 2 years. Working trouble stemmed from a programme of commercial investments and regeneration schemes involving hotel and skyscrapers overseen by its former Tory administration, after piling debts of 1.8 billion, more than 100 times than the annual 16 million of the core funding from the council tax, the government grants and other incomes. The council's Liberal Democrat leadership has blamed the party which they ousted from last year for borrowing billions of pounds to fund risky schemes, including a complex of towers in the town centre, standing as the tallest building outside the big city in England, with a 4-star Hilton hotel, public plaza and parking facilities and shops. Anne-Marie Baker, the council leader, said, "These are dreadful proposals we don't want to put forward. However, it is important to note that it is an historic debt levels that we're dealing with on an unprecedented scale." Although acknowledging that working residents would rightly be unhappy with what we're going to do, Barker said the Conservatives were responsible for running up a 1.2 billion deficit, and we need to put this house in order to live within our means. Despite the effort to find savings, the council document published before a key meeting next week setting out its medium-term financial plan predicted Working said it would still face an £11 million shortfall for its budget in 2024-2025. The council said it was in talks with central government to explore a potential package of financial support. Yeah, this, racking up from investment sprees, like, what on earth were they thinking, guys? It's outrageous. What on earth were they thinking? Like, I mean, like, come on, like, they're not even. How could they allow this to happen? Is the thing, it's just so frustrating that the Conservative councils at that time were allowed to do this and take these risks. Now, I understand, and some people will argue, well, they need some people might argue about the austerity and that, but that still doesn't give them the reason to mount up such an incredibly insane debt and take such ridiculously insane risks, because that's what they were. They were ridiculously insane risks. And you really need to look after your money and balance your books, and this is just absolutely incompetence on a massive industrial scale, guys. Absolutely insane scale. So the troubles and damage of the Conservatives is going to continue in this next one. One Tory MP in particular for quite a huge allegation here, guys, from Sky News. Tory MP Chris Pincher to resign after suspension from the Commons over groping allegations. The former Tory whip Chris Pincher has said he's resigning as an MP after losing his appeal against the suspension for drunkenly groping 2 men, paving the way for another by-election. He will resign after losing his appeal against an 8-week suspension from the Commons following groping allegations. The Commons Standard Committee announced the sanctions in July after investigating the claims whether the former Deputy Chief Whip caused significant damage to the reputation of the House, a breach of the Members' Code. The move means there will be a by-election in his constituency of Tamworth in Staffordshire, which has a Conservative majority of nearly 20,000. It comes on top of a second potential damaging vote for the Tories in mid-Bedfordshire, with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak concealing it will be difficult for his party. Mr Pincher did not appeal against the breach, but argued to the independent expert panel of the IEP that the punishment was disproportionate. He stood down as Deputy Chief Whip in June 2022 after reports that he had groped 2 men while drinking at a Carlton club in central London. He was later suspended by the Conservative Party. In his resignation statement today, Mr Pincher said, I have already said that I will not stand at the next general election. However, following the independent expert panel decision, I wanted to talk to my office team and family. I do not want my constituents to be put further uncertainty, and so in consequence I have made arrangements to resign and leave the Commons. Tamworth is a wonderful place that has been honoured to represent its people. I shall make no such further comments at this time. Mr Pincher has been comfortably voted by Tamworth residents since 2010 and won a 19,634 vote majority at the last general election. So he's very well known by the constituents. He's been there for quite a while. It'll be interesting to see how the by-election goes, that's for sure. But the Tories are wary of any electoral test after the sustained period in which national polling has put the party far behind Labour. Asked about the party's prospects in the by-election, Mr Sunak told reporters in Warwick, mid-term by-elections are always difficult for incumbent governments, and this will be no different, but we're going to keep working hard to deliver for the British people. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said he was hoping to secure the seat for his party. He said that the people of Tamworth have been desperate desperately let down by Mr Pincher and the Tories. The contrast this week could not be starker, could it? I've just put my top team on the table through the reshuffle, and it will take us into election focusing on the country. Labour would need a swing of over 21 points to win the seat, and if they manage it, it will mark the 5th largest Tory defeat to Labour since 1945. That is entirely possible. While that is a huge feat, the party will be bolstered by their victory at the Salisbury and Aylesbury by-election in July, which saw them overturn a 20,000 seat majority following a swing of 23.7 points. Right, so what the groping allegations? The allegations against Mr Pincher has led to the downfall of Boris Johnson after it emerged that the then Prime Minister was aware of an investigation into his conduct 3 years before, yet still appointed him into his role as in his government involving MP's welfare. An investigation by the Commons Standard Committee gave details of the Carlton Club's allegations. The first complacent House of Lords employee claimed Mr Pincher had stroked his neck and squeezed his bottom. The second complacent civil servant said he touched his bottom before moving his hand to touch and squeeze his testicles. Mr Pincher apologised after the reports were released in July and said he had sought professional medical help. The watchdog said Mr Pincher's conduct had been completely inappropriate, profoundly damaged to the individuals concerned, and represent an abuse of power. The 8-week suspension they recommended was enough to trigger a recall petition, which in turn could have led to a by-election. The IEP, which upholds its punishment, said Mr Pincher's arguments were misconveyed or of erroneous, adding the sanctions is far from arbitrary or disproportionate. Well, yes, we have to stress, obviously, these are allegations, and obviously they are very serious allegations, that is for sure, guys. It's just really, really frustrating that, you know, the scandals from the Conservative MPs, guys, it's just been absolutely crazy. It really, really has, and I just wonder, like how many allegations, how many NDAs, how many more Conservative MPs do we not know, you know? And we know that there have been things made against Johnson, and I mean, this is just like, it's just like, how do you think it's acceptable to do what you have done, you know? Yeah, it's just pretty disgusting, to say the least, guys. That is for sure. While you're here, guys, if you can hit the like button, it would be greatly appreciated, and if you can share across social media platforms, and if you're not a subscriber, please click the subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon, and you'll be notified of when I go live or when my videos drop. This next one here is an exclusive from iNews, an interesting one to say the least, guys. We've got 3 more news articles to go through. I seem to be going through them quite a lot faster than I thought, so perhaps this ain't going to be an hour long, but we'll see how it goes. This one, obviously, the headline is Tories accepting 350,000 donations from firms that sells vape, popular with children. The Supreme plc sells desperate disposable e-cigarette brands Watermelon, Bubblegum and Cotton Candy Ice, and the Tory party took a donation from its subsidies despite the government pledging to crack down on the market of such products to youngsters. Well, that's pretty hypocritical if you're claiming that you're going to be cracking down on it, and yet you're taking donations from the same kind of parties. Yeah, bit worrying, isn't it? The Conservatives have accepted a 350,000 donation from a company which sells vaping products with names the like of Watermelon, Bubblegum and Cotton Candy Ice, despite the government's pledge to crack down on vapes aimed at children. Rishi Sunak's party received the sum of money from Supreme 8 LET in May, latest records published by the Electoral Commission revealed. Supreme 8 is owned by Sandeep Singh Chakka, the chief executive of the parent company Supreme plc, a Manchester-based vaping, lighting and battery distributor and manufacturer. Among the vaping products it distributes for the wholesale of trade are Elf Bar, a Chinese-owned firm which has been criticised for marketing vapes to younger age groups. Supreme current sell lines of Elf Bar brands including disposable vapes named Blue Raz Cherry, Watermelon Bubblegum and Cotton Candy Ice. Elf by itself denied targeting youngsters and said its packaging and marketing products must contain a warning that indicated that it is forbidden to sell this product to children. But the Labour Party says the name of the vapes were clearly aimed at younger markets. In May the same month, a Supreme 8 donation was made to the Tories. The Prime Minister pledged to curb marketing of vapes aimed at under 18s. Mr Sunak said he was deeply concerned about the report increase in children vaping and pledged that the government would regularly regulate the market and promote of vapes, including companies that shouldn't be deliberately targeting children. That's illegal and we need to take further action to do so, and that's what we will do. Well, if the packaging is look in the way that it's appealing to kids rather than adults, then you're not exactly helping kids avoid it, aren't you? And the fact that they've made a donation to the Conservative Party, I just, Conservatives will kind of just want to slip it under the rug, sort of thing, this kind of talk, because it isn't on the list of priorities, to be fair, when we talk about it. But it is still a concern, to say the least. And in a tweet, the Prime Minister had said, "My daughters are 10 and 12, and I don't want the way vapes are marketed, promoted, and sold to be attracted to them. That's why I'm launching a new crackdown today to protect children." Just your children, or all children? Shadow Health Secretary Westreen said, "You're sleepwalking into a new generation of children getting hooked on nicotine, yet the Tories are lining their own pockets ahead of protecting children's health. How can Rishi Sunak pretend otherwise when he's taking money from a company selling watermelon bubblegum and cotton candy ice vape flavoured vapes? Labour will come down like a ton of bricks on those peddling vapes to kids. We will ban the market and branding of vapes to children and give every child a healthy start to life." The Conservative Party and Supreme plc were both contacted for comment. At the annual conference of the British Medical Association in July, Derek Litt criticised vaping products targeting children. Dr. Melanie Toff, chair of the BMA Public Health Medicine Committee, told the conference, "The area of most concern is that with their bright colours and packaging, stylish design, sweet shop-inspired flavours and relaxing inexpensive prices, these products are clearly being made to appeal to children and young people." In an article in the Times in May, Chief Medical Officer Sir Chris Whitty wrote that marketing vaping products to children was utterly unacceptable, adding that companies are marketing products targeting specifically at children using colours, flavours and cheap disposable options, whatever they may claim. Yeah, I just think it's I just feel like the Conservatives are kind of just going to let this one kind of sneak away and kind of not make it too much of a hassle sort of on it. Very frustrating, to say the least. We really want to keep children away from these kind of things. They can they can be very addictive. We try to want to encourage our kids to get on the right path, and this is not helping anyone, to say the least. That is for sure, guys. Yeah, frustrating, to say the least, guys. Let me just make sure this is not the right camera. No, this is the right camera. So the next one we got, guys, this is from The Independent, and it's related to, obviously, the RAC talk. So we are going back into that one here. This one is from The Independent. So this one's a bit of an interest, quite a bit more to add to our story about the RAC concrete and other things. So the headline from The Independent is "Crumbling Concrete Crisis Spreads to Houses, Shops and Offices as Major Landlords Order Checks." A major shopping centre owner orders survey as housing associations also begin to investigate the problem. So, there are growing fears that the crisis sparked by the closure of schools over crumbling concrete could spread to offices, shops and even housing, as one of Britain's biggest landlords orders a review of its buildings. Landsec, a major owner of UK shopping centres and office blocks, is to survey its own post-war buildings to check the presence of reinforced autoclave aerial concrete, the RAC. It comes as councils and housing associations were urged to review all their stock for the concrete material compared to aerial bar, aimed at concerns that tenants could be living in unsafe homes. So let me get this right. Hospitals, schools, homes, like, we're just using this for everything now. Is that it? Like, just don't care about the consequences. Just as long as it's cheap, everyone makes a profit. Why are we using this damn, why have we not upgraded everything? I just, oh God. The costs of fixing so much of this country is just going to be not billions, in the trillions. The regulator of social housing, the RSH, has said that RAC is not suspected to be widespread in the post-war tower blocks, but experts told the Independent it could be in some high-rise roofs. So with some high-rises, obviously, you know, with what happened at Grenfell, there's still issues with certain high-rises there. This is just adding compoundingness to people who live in high-rise buildings. Clanton Housing Group, the nation's largest housing association, has already begun reviewing its buildings for RAC concrete. A leading property consultant told the Independent that they had been asked by another housing association to review 8 of their older buildings. The National Housing Federation, the umbrella body for social housing associations across England, said it was still consulting with its members on how best to review stock for the RAC problems. A spokesperson for the NHA said the National Housing NHS is communicating with our members to make sure that we have the most up-to-date advice and guidance on RAC, and we stand ready to offer support to our members and government on this issue. The local government association, the LGA, has ordered council to review whether any buildings, including social housing, contain RAC. Steve McSorley, director of the structural engineering consultancy PEGWA, said RAC is less likely to be prevalent in the 1960s tower blocks. It was rarely used in anything more than 3 stories high, but it's possible we may be found in some roofs. He added, the biggest issue now in the is now in the private sector. You will have some in offices, factories, departments, stores and shops. Problem is you don't have government to overseeing the review. Yeah, that's the problem. See, in the private companies, what's their number one bottom line, guys? It's money, you know. And if they're going to be able to get away without having to pay for these costs, they're going to do it at the end of the day. Mark Allen, chief executive of Lancet, told the Financial Times it would definitely survey for RAC, but said it expected to find a dangerous material in its shopping centre built in the 1970s. It is incumbent on any responsible property owner to do the same work to understand where we might have been exposed, he said. The Institute of Structural Engineers has urged commercial property owners to conduct a survey to identify or eliminate the possibility of RAC. Mark Reynolds, head of the Construction Leadership Council, said it hasn't found any commercial buildings at risk of having RAC problems, but the experts said this would change once companies and individuals began to investigate or become aware of the risks. Social housing lawyers Renworks Sherwood said all councils and housing associations should now have commissioned surveys. They should not need reminding that they have a legal responsibility to manage their buildings and meet repairs and maintain obligations. Inaction is not an option. But how is this going to be enforced? The inaction and the sitting down of not letting it. Is there going to actually be action on it? I'm sceptical. The campaigners have warned that leaseholders on housing estates hit by major bills for cladding works in the wake of the Grenfell tragedy could be liable for the cost of surveying buildings for RAC. Liam Spencer, the cladding campaigner, told the Independent, I suspect that as much with cladding it will snowball. After Grenfell, everybody and his dog started inspecting their buildings. It may be the same with this. Experts have told the Independent that some of the schools in England found to have crumbling concrete may have to be demolished if repairs are becoming too expensive. Mr McSorley said removing RAC can range anywhere between tens of thousands of pounds to multi-millions depending on the scale. His own firm has been engaged in a £10 million project to remove the RAC. The TUC called on Thursday for the government to create a national risk register for all public buildings in the wake of the RAC crisis. The union organisation warned that the issue in schools is likely to be the tip of the iceberg, with hospitals, libraries, community centres and other public buildings also at risk. So we don't just have potentially, like, obviously we don't know for certain, guys, but so we have for confirmation, obviously it's in hospitals, this material. We know it's in schools. Now there's possibility it could be in people's homes, in shopping centres, especially older ones, shops, and it's just, is there buildings that we didn't use this product on because it was such a cheapskate? Like, it is just, yeah, just annoying, guys. But we need to know about these things, and yeah, so RIC could be used so much more than just just schools and hospitals there, it seems, guys. But we'll keep an eye out, obviously, on that as it develops. 2 news articles left for you guys, and we're only about 31 minutes in. Just a reminder, if you can, hit the like button and share across social media. It was all really greatly appreciated. Let's dive right into the next one. This one is from Open Democracy regarding Labour, with the headline: Starmer's assistance among active corporate lobbyists working for the shadow cabinet. A staffer for Labour leader has senior Grant Thornton's role, while Dawes and Reynolds have taken secondaries from lobbyists. A staff member in Keir Starmer's office is selling his knowledge of politics, government and public policy issues to corporate clients through a major constituency firm, Open Democracy can reveal. The staffer, who joined Starmer's team in the summer, is listed as an associate diner of Grant Thornton. The arrangement does not breach any regulations because Labour is not in power, though equivalent roles advising government ministers come with an obligation that holders must not misuse your official position. For example, using your information acquired in your course for your official duties to further your private interests and those of others. Corporate lobbying firms have started expanding their offerings to clients who are looking to influence a likely Labour government next year. In November, it was reported two major lobbying outfits had set up Labour units to help clients influence the party. Over the past year, 3 other corporate lobbyists have had their roles advertised their shadow cabinet while still employed by their corporate bosses, and another 10 forward corporate lobbyists are now working in the offices of members of the shadow cabinet, analysis by this website has found. Oh dear, that's not good. Nick Derren, director of the campaign group Global Justice Now, called it yet more evidence that there is a revolving door between big businesses and the top layers of the Labour Party. While Starmer's staffers appeared to work for Grant Thornton and Labour simultaneously, the other 3 had jobs in the offices of the shadow cabinet members that were directly funded by lobby firms in the form of secondments. One of those was placed in the office of Labour's chair and equalities chief Anne Seal Doggs for 6 months, while 2 more have been placed with Shadow Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds. Throughout their time in Parliament, their salaries were paid by the lobbying firms, none of which would disclose to Open Democracy whether any of their clients had funded the work. I wonder why they didn't. Wonder why, guys. I think it's fair to say we know why, don't we? Starmer's staffers was formerly head of. I should scroll down so you guys can actually see. Was one of. Have I gone too far? Yeah, I have gone too far. Was formerly head of Grant Thornton's Brexit advisory term. A page on the firm's website advertises his knowledge of politics, government and public policy issues to corporate clients. He said he can help our clients make sense of the current what? Macroeconomics and political environment, providing insight and practical advice on what that means for them and their business. What on earth is that word, guys? I can't say that. With a revenue of more than $7 billion last year, Grant Thornton is one of the world's largest professional service networks, offering clients a range of constituency services. Its clients and partners in recent years have included the arms company BAE System, coal miners Aldi, and a range of oil and gas firms. In 2021, the firm was fined $2.3 million for its involvement in the collapse of the bakery chain Pasir Vasir and last year the company was found guilty of bribing officials in Western Australia. The staff member appears to work part-time on Keir Starmer's team and part-time selling his political insights through Grant Thornton. Last year, before he took the role, he wrote a blog on Grant Thornton's website discussing the likely priorities of a future Labour government. A spokesperson for Grant Thornton would not disclose which clients of theirs associate director had been advising since he started working for Starmer, or how he managed any conflicts of interest. There is clearly a conflict of interest here. Clearly. They said, as a leading provider of professional service in the UK, Grant Thornton has a deep expenditure in the public sector and has worked with a variety of government bodies and institutions over the years where our non-partisan input has been of value. And while such engagements will be a matter of public record, it would be inappropriate for us to comment on any specifics. In recent years, Grant Thornton has benefited from more than 300 public sector contracts in the UK. It has also supported hundreds of major corporations on a range of projects, from private healthcare sectors to the oil and gas industry. Oh, these sound like a lovely bunch, don't they, guys? Just kidding, of course. Two other staff members in Starmer's office are former lobbyists who worked at the firm in the in-house communications, whose clients have included Google, e-cigarette company Juul, and a number of major alcoholic brands. Starmer's press officer worked for the firm until August last year, while one of Labour's communication chiefs was previously a director at the firm. Doles, the Labour Party chair and equality spokesperson, had a senior Webster Sharnwick London staffer second to work in her office from September 2022 to March 2023. That's funny, that. Staffers' role at the firm's London office have included senior vice president and team director for corporate enterprise. Since her second ending, she has been heading up another team at Wembear Sandwick. The company would not say whether she has had any involvement in lobbying Labour. Yeah, of course you're not going to say anything, are you? This is just infuriating, but to say the least. Webster Shandwick is perhaps the most controversial for its historic role lobbying on behalf of the tobacco industry, which was recently linked to at least 8 oil and gas companies, some of which have been accused of opposing or seeking to delay net zero policies. The firm also lobbies on behalf of the UK offshore and gas industry as a whole. Webster Shandwick also represents private healthcare firms. Former clients of Dobbs staffer before a second amendment to Labour include sorry, 1 second, just need to check something. Okay. Include Giant Snacks Maldies, which owns brands include Cadbury's chocolates. In recent years, Maldies has been involved in opposing health measures like sugar tax, facing legal action over alleged child slavery, and been accused of involvement in illegal rainforest deforestation. Mondiez has said it has been working relentlessly to take a stand against child labour, which it claims to prohibit, and said it has taken steps to ensure its chocolate doesn't come from illegal deforestation national parks. The staffer and other previous clients have included the estate of letting agency Knight Frank, the French spirit giant Pernod Ricard, which has been battling India's alcohol tax over the last year and is a sponsor of the Labour Party conference. Don't tell me there's something wrong here. Tell me something's wrong here, guys. And the takeaway, Just Eat, which has also given free tickets to a number of Labour figures over the last years. Yeah, I think I covered this about Labour taking lots of freebies from people, haven't they? Keir Starmer specifically, I'm pretty sure. Open Democracy asked Dodd's office what it thought Webster Sandwick had to gain by funding a staff member for 6 months, and was told, "You'd have to ask Webster Sandwick." Webster Sandwick did not respond to our request for comment. Yeah, I wonder why. From September to October 2022, a staffer was second from the PR and lobbying group, the Lowwick Group, to work in the office of Shadow Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds. Immediately before his secondment, he had worked as a lobbyist in another firm, Westminster Digital, best known for running Boris Johnson's online campaign during the 2019 election, though he did not work there at the time. Another one of Reynolds' second staffers is a senior policy manager at HSBC, which is forced by US regulators in 2013 to pay then record fines of more than $1 billion after being found to be the preferred financial institution of the Mexican and Colombian drug cartels. Oh dear, that's not good. Before working for HSBC, she was registered as a lobbyist for Portland Communications, a major lobbying agency. As well as shadow cabinet staffers currently working as corporate lobbyists or political advisors, Open Democracy has found 10 staffers for shadow cabinet members who previously worked at corporate lobbyists. Responding to the revelations, the Green MP Caroline Lucas said, "Under this Conservative government, we've seen the endless revolving door between MPs, ministers and big businesses reach new heights. It's deeply worrying that Labour are already set to follow in their footsteps." Absolutely bang on, Caroline Lucas. Couldn't agree more with her comments there. If they form the next government, they mustn't be in the back pocket of any industry. We urgently need policy and legislation that consistently prioritises the greater public good over letting big corporations trouser ever bigger projects. Yeah, we've got to can't be completely consumed by these companies, otherwise they're going to destroy this country. We're already shattered as it is. Tommy Shepherd, the MP for Edinburgh East and SNP Constituency Affairs spokesperson, says, "This is quite shocking and quite extraordinary news. I've not been aware of this before. I've known special advisors who went to work for Webster Shandwick, but I've never known people riding both horses at once. Labour ought to be aware that these companies are not doing this on behalf of the Labour Party. They're doing this because they want to influence a potential future government on behalf of corporate clients." He added, "Labour need to be more careful about where they take their staffers from." DePerron told Open Democracy, "Many parts of society with an alternative vision for the future and finding it really hard to get a single meeting with shadow ministers. A Labour government in hook with corporate interests is a very short-lived Labour government. The world has changed across the US, Europe and the emerging economies. The economic myths of the last 40 years are being punctured. Business lobbyists does not have the answers to the problems we face. If Labour want to govern successfully, we need to start listening to a much wider pool of people." A Labour spokesperson said that employment and secondary arrangements have been transparently declared in line with legal requirements and parliamentary rules. Yeah, we know they're in the rules, but they're not. But it's not right. Can we trust Labour, guys? At this point, really, we do need the Conservatives gone. But it doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't be cautioned and be aware that of Labour. And we do need to call this kind of stuff out when it happens, that is for sure. We can't just let it sit there and fizzle, you know what I mean? And not be afraid to actually say, hey, this is wrong, you shouldn't be doing this. I think it's really, really important. One more story for you guys before we wrap things up here on Newsround. This one is from Byline Times as well. Not for say as well, but this one, I like to think of using Byline Times and Open Democracy together, really. But yeah, good one from Byline Times. Hopefully we find this one a bit interesting. So dozens of Tory and Labour MPs can claim extra allowances for a third child despite backing cruel two-child benefit cap. What? 4,222 households across the UK estimate to be affected by the two-child allowance limit, but not members of Parliament. What the is this, guys? Yeah. Over 30 MPs have been entitled to claim accommodation costs for a third child during this Parliament, all while representative parties that support the retention of the two-child benefit limit, Byline Times can reveal. MPs who represent constituencies outside of London are entitled to claim back rental costs on a second home in either London or their constituency up to a total of £26,840 or £19,090 for 2023-2024 for those with caring responsibilities. MPs can increase this amount by £6,120 for each child up to a total of 3. Prior to 2017, regulations on eligibility stated that children need to be routinely resident resident with the MP. However, difficulties around this enforcement meant they have since been relaxed, so that MPs who simply need to provide accommodation for up to 3 children can qualify for these uplifts. Based on the analysis figures from the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority, the IPSA, 31 MPs who have registered 3 dependents as part of their claims for accommodation costs are either Conservative or Labour politicians. Excuse me. The figure includes Matt Hancock, who currently sits as an independent, having lost the whip in November 2022. Not all have claimed part of their entitlement for their third child. The number of eligibility to claim the allowance amounts to 5% of MPs. Introduced in 2017 by George Osborne, the policy has meant families are no longer able to claim a child tax credit or universal credit for their third child or any subsequent children, which amounts to missing out on up to £3,235 a year per child for 2023-2024. In an interview this July, Keir Starmer confirmed that a Labour government would not commit to scrapping the policy, an announcement that angered party members and campaigners alike. There is one policy change that we knew that would make a direct and immediate difference, and that is to scrap the 2-child limit. The policy is unfair and indiscriminate impacts it has on children. There is no evidence that it has achieved its aims, says Joseph Hughes, the chair of the End Child Poverty Coalition and CEO of Buttle UK. Across the constituencies represented by MPs eligible for the expensive uplifts in 3 children, child poverty stands at an average of 29%, while 1 in 10 children are in households affected by a 2-child limit, according to data at the End Child Poverty Coalition. Labour Shadow Cabinet Minister Jonathan Reynolds, who told the Labour conference in 2021 that the party's plans to include binning the 2-child limit, ensuring that 500,000 fewer people would be in poverty right now, have benefited most significantly from this parliamentary entitlement. Over the course of this parliament, Reynolds claimed that $16,264 in accommodation costs for his third child, while 1 in 8 children of his constituency in his household are affected by the 2-child limit. One rule for them and another rule for other. Reynolds is closely followed by Matt Hancock, the MP for West Sussex, where the child poverty rate is 19%, who has claimed $15,730 over the 3 years for which the data from the IPSA has been published in 2021-2022, the most recent year of data available. Hancock was the only MP to spend all of his accommodation and 3-child uplift entitlement on rental costs, at a total of $32,820. 422,000 households across the UK are estimated to be affected by the 2-child limit, which with research from the University of York, finding that the policy disproportionately impacts those living in private rented properties and ethnic minority households. Again, why are they allowed to get away with it and we're not? I just like... Am I the only one who just thinks this is just so out of order? Just treats us like peasants all the goddamn time. Kate Anderson, a member of the Benefits Change and Larger Family Study, told Byline Times that their 3-year comprehensive research programme has demonstrated that the 2-child limit does not meet its intended aim and instead causes multiple severe harms that are likely to have long-lasting consequences for parents and their children. Such harms include falling behind on essential bills, building up a range of debts, being unable to save for their future, or replacing essential items such as white goods or furniture. Parents are also struggling to afford essential items for children like food, clothing and heating, all of which negatively impacts physical and emotional development and contributes to increased stress and anxiety across the households. 1.5 million children are growing up today under the impact of this policy, which alongside the pandemic and the cost of living crisis has caused untold harm, according to the End Child Poverty Coalition. Of course it is. It all compounds. It all compounds onto it. More and more children are living in poverty, turning up to schools without having breakfast, relying on food from food banks and living in freezing homes during the winter, says Hughes. Abolishing the 2-child limit is seen as one of the most cost-effective ways of reducing child poverty, which currently stands at 29%. Child Poverty Action Group have estimated that at a cost of $1.3 billion, 2,500 children would be lifted out of poverty, and a further 8,500 children would be in less deep poverty. Labour Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves has said that such a move would be unaffordable. Retaining the limit is necessary to rebuild the trust of the electorate. What electorate are you looking at? What electorate are you blimmin' looking at? There has been no French-based opposition to this stance, 3 of whom continue to benefit from uplifts in accommodation costs for their 3rd child. This call from any current or future government to end the harms of this policy is clear from Actions for Children's Director of Policy and Campaigns and Action for Children, Imran Hassan. The impact of the policy has been devastating financially for many of the families Action for Children frontline workers support every day. Any government serious about tackling child poverty will eventually have to confront the cruel reality of policy that is designed to actively stop poor children receiving assistance to meet the minimal needs. It's what's more infuriating is that they're basically taking it for a spin. This whole scheme, like these MPs are claiming basically the money back, and it's so outrageous. And again, the presence of one rule for them and another for other guys, and it's just absolutely mickey taking, that is to say the least. Very frustrating, but needed to know about these nonetheless, guys. But what did you guys think of all 7 news stories that we have looked at today, guys? Let me know here in the live chat, or let me in the comments after the premiere has finished what your guys' thoughts are. Thank you very much for another round of Newsround. Not a full hour this time around, but it is what it is. But maybe if it wasn't so hot, maybe I probably would have been a bit more indulgent, guys. But thank you guys very much for watching. Like, share and subscribe as always. Hit the bell notification icon to be notified of whenever my videos come up and go live. And if you want to financially support me, you can do it via Patreon in the links down below, or buy me a coffee, which are also in the link down below. Any financial support will be greatly appreciated in my current situation. Thank you very much, take care, and have a great morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you